So let me start with Prime Minister Trudeau. You know, everybody remembers Prime Minister, something that I think says a lot when you were first elected, and people were very surprised when you had a parity in terms of the number of women that you had as cabinet members. And you gave an answer that I think is the answer of the day. He says, this is not whatever the old year, this is 2015. It's kind of saying this is something that its time has come, and it's come a long time ago. So I'd love to see not only what you've been able from that day onwards develop inside the Canadian government, and then we'll have a chance a little bit to talk what you've done through the foreign policy of Canada, which is equally fascinating. But first, let's start with that.
Well, I think one of the first things, and people often remark on that, you know, because it's 2015 answer, but you will know that before it could be 2015 and before I could name a gender-balanced, gender-equal cabinet, it had to be 2014, 2013, 2012, where we were going out and recruiting extraordinary, strong women leaders to run, reaching out and making sure there was a pipeline, there was the right voices stepping up. And we know that getting women to run for politics is always more difficult than getting men to run for politics. And that idea of how we think about not just going for the end results, but understanding the process of how we reduce barriers, how we create changes is extraordinarily important. And that's where, you know, what we've been able to do as a government over the past 3 years has really highlighted that gender parity, that involving and empowering women to be the extraordinary leaders that we need them to be, is also changing the way things are done. It's not just about doing the right thing, it's about doing the smart thing. So whether it's how we've moved forward on child benefit programs that have really made a huge difference across the country, particularly for the middle class and those working hard to join it. Whether we're moving forward more recently on pay equity, which is going to be a big challenge everywhere around the world in terms of making sure that people are getting the same pay for work of equal value. How we're moving forward with supports for women entrepreneurs, make sure that capital is flowing to women who are running startups, making sure that women are going into STEM programs, studying in science, technology, engineering, and math, and getting those jobs. And then, once you get people into those jobs and you reduce those barriers to accessing them, making sure that we're reducing the barriers that prevent them from being, continuing in those jobs, making sure that the choices throughout life are shifted. And one of the things that we've done is brought in second parental leave, so that fathers have a use it or lose it 5 weeks off that automatically means two things. First of all, fathers will be more involved in child raising from the very beginning, which we know creates better outcomes for the family, for individuals, and for society. But it also means that when an employer looks at a young man or a young woman in an interview to see who they'll hire, well, either one of them, if they start a family, will be taking time away from work, and therefore that removes one of the social barriers that is expected. Because if it's use it or lose it, it is much more common for, and we've seen this in a number of countries around the world that have done it, for paternal leave to be a real thing. So there's all sorts of shifts we're making because we know that you cannot succeed as a society if you are holding back half of your population, and looking at all the different barriers and moving forward on reducing them, on eliminating them, as well as a government body looking at how every different decision can have an impact on women in a positive or a negative way. Even big infrastructure projects. You might not say, oh, what does a gender lens have to do with building this new highway or this new pipeline or something? Well, there are gender impacts. When you bring construction workers into a rural area, there are social impacts because they're mostly male construction workers. How are you adjusting and adapting to those? That's what the gender lens in GBA-plus budgeting is all about. These are all things that we've been doing, not to be nice or to be better or to be moral, but to be smart about getting the very best out of all of our citizens and making the very best out of our economy, because women entrepreneurs tend to make better choices than others. We've seen it study after study. So this is all something that I see the world moving on in many ways. Leaders are moving on, but the business community needs to wake up and move on as well, and that's certainly something that Shahrzad here has done a lot of work.
Sure. Well, thank you, Prime Minister. You're amazing.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's well known to everyone in this room, because you're in this room, and allow me to thank all the men who came out to this this session as well, is that if you want to get something done right in a way that lasts, whether you're talking about creating peace, or whether you're talking about social entrepreneurism, or whether you're talking about running a big multinational company, having women involved, having women leading it, gives you a better chance of actually succeeding in whatever it is you're doing. So when we make the ask on any of our international engagements, okay, and how are you making sure that women's leadership roles are being filled, that there is proper input from strong women and then strong diversity into this project, we're actually not just, again, doing the right or the moral thing. We're making sure that we have the best chances of making a success out of whatever this project is. And getting that mindset is something that we're seeing more and more from governments. And yes, you know, in a place like the G20, the leaders come around and we talk about all the different things we're doing to try and move forward on bringing governments to a better place in terms of empowering women. And you know, Maurizio has been a strong leader this year with Argentina's G20. Next year it's in Japan, and certainly one of the big focuses of Abenomics by the Prime Minister is to get more women into the workforce in a society in Japan that doesn't do a very good job around gender balance. And he's trying to change that because there is a need for growing the workforce. So we are really hoping that there are going to be a lot and continuing conversations at the G20 about women's leadership. But, and this is really important, it can't just be governments looking for the framework and the leverage. And this is where Shahrzad and Clarissa and the entire women leaders approach is so essential. We need to have private sector leadership. We need to have partners in businesses who get it and who actually take the steps that, you know, Shahrzad and others have taken and have showcased, that, you know, promoting women within the company, making sure that on your board, that in your executive positions, there are strong women leaders and that there is a strong pipeline for them and supports throughout their career. That is the shift we need to make, and it can't just be done by government. So that's why it was so important for me to come to this meeting of the G20 Women's Leaders Taskforce, because that is a key element that often gets overlooked when we think, oh, government needs to do this, government needs to do that. Yes, there's a lot that we can and do need to do, but we can't change a society on our own. We need leaders that are business leaders, that are municipal leaders, that are community and cultural leaders, always to be part of it as well. And the, you know, the leadership that so many extraordinary women business leaders are showing and need to continue to show throughout the coming G20s is going to be very important.
I know we're running out of time, but I can't help but ask the Prime Minister something that is very telling about Latin America in the following sense.
I know what you want to know. You want to know how I balance my responsibilities as a Prime Minister and also a father with young children, because it is a challenge. And I try to make sure that I have enough time to spend with them on weekends and enough time to really be there for them while I'm doing the important work that I'm doing. But it's, you know, it's something that I work on. But, you know, being a good dad really is important. But it's not incompatible, being a father of young children, to being a world leader at the same time, just to reassure you all.
But I don't want to let you off the hook easily. Think about this.
What, that wasn't your question?
No.
I'm shocked.
But that was actually a good place for you. But anyways, there is a reality, and that is that, objectively speaking, as Clarissa would tell you, there's been a lot of advances of women empowerment in Latin America, in the political field, some in the business field. But the part that is the worst is the minute people close their door at home, and the amount of domestic violence and the amount of abuse that exists there. You've done a lot of things there, and I just like to have you kind of give us a perspective on that as well.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to talk about honestly is the kind of toxic masculinity that has infiltrated so much of our world. The idea that a man has to be so strong that he can't show emotions, that he has to be the leader in the home and has to be the primary breadwinner, and any threat to that somehow makes him less of a man. This is something that has been part of traditional societies going back centuries, but it's time to change that. And the way we change that is in how we raise our children. Now, when I had, when I was talking to my wife about, how I could be a better feminist as a leader, I said, well, you know what? I have to make sure that at home as well, I'm teaching my daughter that she can do anything, that she should be a feminist, that there are no barriers to what she can achieve in her life. My wife said, yes, Justin, that's very smart, yeah. And what are you going to tell your sons? And I realized, oh yeah, I have to raise my sons to be feminist as well, to know that their sister can do anything they want, and to be better allies to women. Now, I do not believe that most men are not open to this. I just know that we are in a culture where it is easiest for men to try and distance themselves from it in so many situations, in so many cases. And what we need are strong men to show up as allies, as supporters, to, yes, call out a colleague on misogynistic comments or an off-color joke that makes the workplace feel unsafe. We need men to be part of making this change, because unfortunately, the way society and communities have evolved, men are more listened to, men have more power. And if we want to change that, which we do and we need to, men have to use some of that power that they've been unfairly given to reshape these conversations, to empower the extraordinary voices that are all around us, but that could certainly use stronger allies in difficult situations. And that's the culture shift we need to work on together.
Thank you so much. That was great. This has been a real privilege. Prime Minister Trudeau, thank you very much for your inspiration. Thank you, Sharzad and Clarissa, for the great work that you're doing. And I hope to all of you, let's give them a big round of applause. I think we learned a lot.